Patrick Santamaria of Motoric, Babe Cool. Welcome. This is my first ever interview I've done, so thanks for being my test subject.
I've been interviewing, but I've never been interviewed, I don't think.
Yeah, I've been interviewed a lot, but I've never done it myself.
We're on the wrong side of this thing now.
Yeah, right? We just jumped on the other end of it. When was the first time I came? I don't even know when the first time I came to one of your events was. I think you guys were in this scene a little before I was. Like, you were in a band originally, weren't you?
Yeah, I guess that was my entryway into being a creative person, was playing in a band.
Yeah. What was that called again? Was that Los Valentinos?
Los Valentinos.
Los Valentinos, yeah. And were you guys signed to Modular during that whole era or something else?
Modular was our booking agent.
Booking agent, okay.
But etc. was our label.
Great.
And put out our album.
Cool.
And I mean, that was an amazing time. Like, I was young. I was a bass player in a band, kind of on this pretty crazy, like living a bit of a weird life, working with really great people.
Yeah.
So in that kind of introduced me to this world of like incredible creative people, and I just thought, well, in some capacity I'm going to do this for the rest of my life for sure.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So
what year was that? Just thinking back now.
Valentinos were probably active from like 2004 to 2009.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, we did a couple of EPs and an album in that time.
Nice.
But I mean, the important thing that I took away from that is like a lot of the people that I met and the things that I learned during that time, I think will kind of like directed my life.
Perfect. Yeah, and who else was in your band? There was some other prominent kind of figures as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Kieran Callanan, who's the infamous, was a guitarist in our band, and Daniel Stricker was the drummer, and he went on to play in Midnight Juggernauts, and he runs Siberia Records now. Yeah. Very interesting dude. Spent a lot of time on the road with these guys.
I think I rented his house once.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
I went over to your house that you were Airbnb, and I was like, I've been here before. This is Dan Stricker's house.
That was wild. I was back for the first time in a while, I think for like a Stereosonic tour or something. Yeah. And I wanted to stay over in the East, just go surfing every morning. And I rented this random Airbnb, and it was your old mate Dan Stricker's
I went over. You sent me the address, and I was like, I think I know that address.
Yeah, we had this whole party, and like you guys and like DJ Snake and the Major Lazer crew and a bunch of people on the tour came over, and you're like, I know this house.
I met Paddy, your manager, for the first time that day.
Oh, amazing!
Which is like, I met a lot of interesting people that day, but I felt like I felt really vindicated meeting Paddy, and like I had a really good connection with him, and we talked about some mad stuff, and
Paddy's a wild dude. Paddy's my manager for everyone who doesn't know.
We had this like years-long email relationship, and to meet him in my friend's house that I used to play in a band with.
That's crazy.
That was weird.
Because I mean, we were very deep in work that year, weren't we? We were doing a lot of things, and you guys put in some crazy hours for us getting a lot of things together.
Yeah, well, that was the year that you're starting to transition from your DJ show into a live show. Yeah. And I think, a big part of that was creating the visual world for that.
Yes, definitely.
And, I mean, I'm sure we'll discuss this in great detail, but that was when we started to really work together a lot. Yeah. And like closely kind of talking every day, checking in, that kind of thing. So that was a pretty special time. Yeah,
it was cool. I remember even showing you guys like, I think most of my unreleased demos, and then talking about the narrative behind each song, and then kind of building the world. And I think the first round of stuff, you guys led a lot of it, and then we started to get more collaborative. Like I'd send you guys just this whole Pinterest board of like visuals and ideas and images and textures and things like that, and we started throwing ideas around like that.
Our process changed a lot over the years. I think at first, like, we were both pretty new to working in that way, making visuals for a live show, and then it became more and more expressive. And I think the last one of the, by the end, the briefs were just these stories. You were just writing these stories. These like 1,000-word email stories, and we would interpret that visually, like. Things evolved. Our process evolved over the time, didn't it?
I loved as well how much you guys challenged me. Like sometimes you'd send me something and I wouldn't be that into it, and then I'd like give it a moment and give it a couple of weeks, and it would really grow on me, and then I'd see it in the show, and I'm like, you were totally right. Like that was perfect, and I didn't even think of that.
It's pretty weird.
The DNA one, I think, is that the one with the like squiggled lines that go purple and
Oh
white.
yeah.
Yeah, that I saw that at some festivals, and I was just like, this looks like nothing else, and it's very minimal because we're doing very thin squiggly lines on a huge black LED wall, whereas most people are like trying to blast people with color and blast people with stimulation.
That's something we learned over the time because I think some of the first stuff that we did was like super intense.
Yeah.
Like really just every color possible being used on every frame. Everything was extremely laborious and super over the top and hyper real, and it was that's how we started. And actually your music kind of evolved during the time that we were working together as well. And from being very bombastic and loud and quite in your face, and then some more kind of subtle and beautiful things started to come into your work, and we try to reflect that.
Nice word choice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. No, it's been a really exciting venture with you guys. I think the most in-depth thing we ever did was probably the Divide and Conquer video. Yeah. Where I sent you that 15-page Word document with like a kind of 15-second by 15-second outline with images and text and... Yeah,
that was very prescriptive. You had a very... That's the thing, like, sometimes you would just kind of give us an open brief and say, interpret the music.
Yeah.
And then other times, I guess, you had a very specific vision of what you wanted to see represented for the songs. But Divide and Conquer was very challenging for us because it was a story, basically, that we wanted to tell.
Yeah. You guys nailed it. Nailed it. It was like...
Yeah, we're pretty proud of that one, actually.
So incredible, dude. I watched that the other week. It just sort of came on in between things on YouTube, and I was just like, damn, this was like so intense and so much, and it really is just like a flawless piece, I think, from you guys, man.
I mean, it was a challenge, definitely, because there was a story in it, and very much a story, and that's not our style. We're kind of visual, and we imply meaning in our work, but we don't tell stories. We don't usually have actors or scripts or anything like that. We just kind of have these ideas and these visuals that we just kind of conceptualize. But we had to take our approach and then this storytelling approach and kind of try and make them work together. I think it worked.
Amazing. So you worked with Adidas, Sony, Harley Davidson. What are some of the most exciting things that you've worked on, and what was it about it that really intrigued you? Obviously with those big brands that I mentioned at the start, but then also Zed's Dead, Jaguar Ma, the Bag Raiders.
I like working on projects where I have like a personal relationship with the client. I mean, then I don't think about it as a client, I think about it as a personal project for myself, Yeah. And like, obviously over the years, your stuff has been, a world build, which has been huge, and that's something I don't even really think of as work. I always make time to do that stuff.
Yeah.
And similarly, I think the stuff I do with Jaguar Ma has been kind of similarly rewarding.
Yeah.
So Jono from Jaguar Ma, who you made a track with him.
Yeah, he and I worked on Stuck in Orbit, which was on my album, and we've got a bunch of other things we've started that we're very excited about, but always finding limited time in the same country to finish anything else.
Yeah, I know how it is. And Jono's in Byron now.
He is. I was meant to go up there on this little stint, but it just became so short.
I'm going up next week to hang out with him.
Damn, I'm leaving the country in 4 days. I'm only here for not even...
Well, next time you come back, we should both go to Byron and do something together.
We've already talked about, I think when I come back for Laneway, I'm going to try and take a week and just stay up there and work, and it's such a vibe up there.
Yeah,
just
it's great.
The vegetable garden, you're up there in the hills, and
it's
just green and beautiful. And
so that's like an example of, I don't consider that work. I consider that an artistic endeavor, working with Jono, the same way that I feel about working with you. Jono and I used to play in a band together.
You and
Jono was in the Valentinos as well.
I thought so. Yeah.
So when Kieran went off to do his solo stuff, concentrated on his solo stuff, Jono joined the band, and that's how I got to know him. I guess even after the band kind of stopped doing stuff, that creative relationship just continued.
Awesome.
In one form or another, because it just felt right. So I've done a lot of visuals, and I've designed the album covers and done a lot of visuals.
Did you do Howling? Did you do that cover?
Yeah.
That was incredible. That's one of my favorite artworks I think I've ever seen.
It was so simple. I just took a photo from his family photo album and just...
Really?
Yeah.
It reminds me of that, the cover of, I can't remember which album by the Beatles when they're all crossing the road on that cross.
Yeah.
It makes me think of that. I always think of that as like one of the best in the recent decades.
I mean, yeah, I love it as well. It was so simple. Like that, working on Jaguar Mine has been a collaborative process as well.
Yeah.
Because as you know, Jono's brother is an amazing director as well.
That's right.
Yeah, and photographer. Yeah. He's a photographer and director, and he just had some family photo albums, and he sent me some images, and I just went, that's the album cover right there. And
amazing.
Just did a little bit of Photoshop work and stuck the title on it, and that was it. So sometimes it's, sometimes designing for an artist is just having the right connection with the music and just knowing what's right. And then other times it's like really, working at it and working through it, and
definitely.
More of an involved process.
How do you feel going between visual art and music and parties? And I know from my experience in recent years, I feel like my brain's getting pulled apart, but it all seems to stimulate each other. And I sort of found the more I go between, the more exciting everything becomes. But how do you find it going between all those different things that you guys do?
I struggled with it for a while.
Yeah.
For a long time, I struggled with that kind of two parts of my life. I felt like there was the music stuff, and then there was my, advertising agency designer guy that would have to go to meetings with, PR companies and stuff like that. And then there was the guy throwing techno parties and like warehouse
in
parties
tunnels
and stuff.
in Byron.
Yeah, just doing like straight up illegal shit. And I felt like the two were kind of pulling away from each other.
Yeah.
But a couple of years ago, I made like a concerted decision to be like, no, I'm not going to hide one side from the other anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to fully embrace the fact that I'm a designer and I, do, stuff that I want the world to see. And then I do my music events, and some of that is just, like I said, straight up illegal. And
say that again on camera.
we do warehouse parties. We've done warehouse parties and kind of...
You do some of the best warehouse parties
over the years.
I've happened to see.
Yeah, over the years I feel like we've done, So I've embraced the two things as complementary now. And, I take inspiration from both worlds and I feed them into each other now as much as... I actively do that as much as possible now.
Mm.
Yeah. Whereas I feel like for years I was... like I said, I was just kind of keeping the two separate.
Yeah.
And things have gotten... I feel like my work's gotten a lot better as a result of that. And I feel like I'm happier as a person as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And I would never go back to trying to separate the two anymore.
It's interesting. I know I found it's challenging for me to think about the two. Like if I was doing one so much, it was hard to pull back into the other. But then when I started doing them simultaneously, it helped both. And everything became seamless rather than became a stressful chore. Like I'm doing this right now and I know in the back of my mind I've got to skip over to that because the time's running out for deadlines on things and whatever it may be. But I think doing them simultaneously is challenging but very rewarding once you get there.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, I used to try and divide my time between, okay, during the day I'm doing design stuff and I'm doing my work.
Yeah.
And then at night I'm running this record label and doing parties and stuff, and I would just apportion one time to this and the other time to that. And now it's all happening at the same time. It's overlapping, one's feeding into the other, and it's far less stressful that way.
Yeah.
It's not like, you feel like you're having an affair or something. Running off.
An artistic affair.
Answering the,
Between the light commercial side and the illegal dark side.
Yeah.
That's another thing I think is, as artists, having to have something that's very stable to support us while we have these more ambitious artistic endeavors. And, traditionally running a small indie label is not too profitable. Or consistently a deficit. So it's great that you've found something that you love to do, which is your day work, that also crosses over with your passion and your night work.
Totally. Around, I mentioned a couple of years ago, I had this kind of realization that I didn't want to separate things and I wanted to, make everything work towards one goal.
Yeah.
A part of that was the realization that, okay, the music stuff isn't necessarily going to make any money.
Yeah.
So like, cool, just accept that. You know, it's something that I need to do, and let that be what it is. And that kind of acceptance has let the the record label, and the stuff that I do in music be more interesting, I think.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no commercial reliability on that.
Yeah. How would you describe the last, the last decade of Sydney nightlife? I look back when I first started, which is, I came in as an observer and an attendee, probably when you guys were really throwing the parties and involved in the parties. I'm thinking of the Bang Gang era when Ed Banger was really huge and Modular was really huge. I think back to events like Park Life and Big Day Out and all the after parties and things that went on around those. What was it like being a part of, the artistic and musicians side of that scene in that time? I think back as the greatest things I've ever seen and witnessed in terms of going out to events.
I agree with you completely. I've lived through that trajectory, definitely. Actually, I turned 18 in 2000.
Yeah.
Which makes me 36 now. Crazy. But yeah, in 2000, if you remember, that was the year that the Olympics happened.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a coming of age of Sydney. And if you went out in Sydney at night as an 18-year-old, you were going out for the first time. I couldn't believe how vibrant the city was.
Amazing.
Like, we were celebrating who we were. Everything was open all the time. It was just, Sydney was really popping off. It really was. And I think that kind of set the stage for like my generation that was turning, just turning 18 at that time, to be super inspired to just go out there and do things. And that, we kind of threw away the rule book of what had happened before that. And, everyone I knew was starting bands, starting parties, doing exhibitions, pop-up spaces. Like, it was just stuff, making fashion labels, and just, with no experience of any of that stuff, they were just like, well, we can do it. There's nothing stopping us from doing it. So why don't we just have a go? And so, we kind of like grew up in this time where, fashion labels were popping off and bands were playing at their launch parties, and there'd be club nights with DJs and bands playing at them. And there was no rules anymore about like separating club and fashion and music. And it was just this super vibrant time and very free. Felt very free. I remember going to Surrey Hills was a different place at that time as well. The kids don't live in the city anymore. Like, they've kind of slowly gotten pushed out by the prices and the lack of vibe. Yeah. But I remember one of my first, inspiring musical moments was going to see a band play. I think something happened to the venue, like they had a fire or the sprinklers had gone off and the venue had closed for the night. And the band that was meant to be playing there just went and played at in a garage.
Really?
Just played in the garage of a guy in Surrey Hills. They just opened up their garage as a venue. And so they were playing in this garage, and the street was like where the audience were. And the cops didn't even come.
Wow.
Like a full band with a PA, like a band from LA.
It's just all the neighbours are probably young people that
I think
thought
so,
it was cool and just came down and joined in.
I guess the neighbours were just like, well, that's the kind of stuff that happens here. And
this is what Sydney is about.
Yeah, and I wasn't even playing in a band at that point. I was like still, kind of an observer. And I saw that and I was like, dude, this is what I want to do. This is
amazing.
Yeah, I want to be a part of this vibe. Yeah, but if you even kind of try to imagine something like that happening in Surrey Hills now, it just seems insane.
Yeah, it's a bit sad, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, so I lived through that whole 2000s period where, like, as you said, Bang Gang, Subi, Modular, that whole thing was just, it really was an organic scene that emerged.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it emerged purely organically. Whatever you think about it aesthetically or whatever, that was a real organic grassroots scene that came out of the kids and worked its way to, top of the charts. So that's special.
I think something really beautiful about that era was, like, you look now and dance music really became the forefront of popular culture probably around 2009, 2010, 2011. Whereas back then, dance music was still a cool underground thing. It wasn't really played on radio. So it was like the only messages about it were getting spread through things like MySpace and like blogs. And there was even like forums on the internet just before that. And it was so cool that it didn't really cross over, so it just stayed cool. And you didn't have cell phones filming everything and capturing everything. So the only way you could see something was if you went and saw it. You went and got a ticket to the event. You went and experienced it. And you only shared it with those people that were there. No one else really knew about it. And all you could do was tell people how amazing it was and hopefully go and see the next one.
It was the last scene to exist without social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My first concert was Big Day Out when I was 17. And I saw Justice for the first time.
Yeah.
And I was like in a rock band at that time.
Yeah.
And I saw Justice and I was like, what is this sound? What is this noise? What is this? I've never experienced anything like it. I didn't know you could do this. I didn't know this was possible. And I think Too Many DJs played that year as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. Ajax I saw for the first time. The presets played, like right as Beams had come out. Oh man, it changed my life. I went home that day and Googled what all these acts were that I'd never even heard of. And then I was like, that's it. I want to do this forever.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty, it was, I think that whole scene was so, had so much energy to it. And it was inspired.
It was so real.
It was so, it felt pretty real at the time. And I think it inspired the next generation in a big way.
I almost look at it like me going to those things just as an attendee inspired me to get into music and everyone my age and a little bit younger. And that's almost when the like bedroom producer started. We were inspired by this culture that was popping off and everyone was seeing. We decided we want to do that. And we started just making music, which had become a little more available just on a personal computer.
Yeah. I mean, I remember it wasn't that long ago that making music on a computer was virtually impossible. Yeah, real-time tracking and stuff like that needed like a studio computer. Like the thought of doing that on a laptop wasn't that long ago that was just insane to think that you could do that. So multi-tracking and producing music in your bedroom.
Yeah, I remember when I started DJing, I only knew like 2 other DJs.
Yeah,
that was it. I only knew 2 people that DJed.
Yeah.
And when I first started, I couldn't even afford all the equipment because as a kid it was just too expensive. So I bought like a DJM 800 and a Mark III 1000.
Burning CDs.
Yeah, burning CDs. Yeah. Oh, just always covered in alcohol and then rotting away and not working anymore when you need them. And all I couldn't afford 2 decks. I couldn't afford 1, so I just started mixing in and out of a DVD player. But I needed the club setup, so I knew all the buttons, I knew where everything was, and it was sort of like, all right, I'll just play a song here. There's like a 1.8 second delay when I hit play, and you always had to adjust the right jog to get it back. You couldn't, adjust both. But it was cool to learn.
You were mixing off the CD onto a DVD.
Yeah, off the CDJ into a DVD player.
Wow.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah, it was challenging. I had one friend who had some equipment up the road, and sometimes he let me borrow one of his decks. It was like this really bad American audio. But it was good. It was good learning on like a disjointed setup. So you get into the club and you're like, oh, this is a breeze.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think technology is defining the new generation of musicians. The fact that it's so available means that there's a lot of people doing it. And I think in a way that means that the cream will always rise and people will find new interesting ways of doing things. Yeah. Definitely. Push the technology to its limits.
You touched on, I guess I just want to talk about Bang Gang, who was such an inspiration for me. And then the whole, Dan Single creating Subi. And then, that is such a well-renowned brand around the world now. And just that idea of these parties where like such a prominent fashion label mixed in with incredible dance music culture. I've spoken in years since with like Diplo and A-Track about that era, and kind of how Australia was the only place where it all came together. Everyone sort of talks about it in this sense of, the Bang Gang guys were playing French electro, but then they were also playing ballet funk. They were also playing stuff Jersey Club and Be More. They were playing all these insane remixes of the Australian bands like Van Shee, Cut Copy.
Yeah.
Midnight Juggernauts, presets. It was just this mash of everything, and it seemed to only exist here, and everyone still talks about it as like such an incredible moment in time.
Well, you know, that was the same time that I was playing in Los Valentinos, and those kind of things were happening at the same time. And we put out a record on Band Gang, which was like, we were a band, like a band, like a guitar band. And they were just like, oh, we just like it. We like your music. We'll put out a record, one of your records. And it's like, okay, well, it's not even electronic music, but whatever. So that was kind of indicative of the mindset that they had, and they really had no like rules. I don't think that they even thought about it. Yeah, that there should be rules. You know, it's not like they threw away the rules. It's that they just had no concept of it.
That point really brings me to something very prominent that I'm just remembering now is when What's So Not first started and first making music. I remember I was already DJing around Australia a bit, and knew a bunch of people, and I sent the first records to like all the labels in Australia, and no one wanted to sign it. And one label even said to me, "We can't sign this because it'll never work in a nightclub." And then I remember Adrian from Bang Gang, he was the one who was like, "This is like nothing else. I love this. This is like, what do you say? This is like Switch and Sinden and then some other, you know, weird Australian thing I've never heard before, all sort of mashed together." And he really believed in it. And I think at that time, Watson had like 200 followers on Facebook or something, and he signed it. He backed it. He bigged it up. He sent it out to everyone, and then got it in the hands of like Switch and Boys Noise and Sinden and you know, all these incredible DJs and producers of the time. And I think him getting us to remix a Banshee record, wasn't it? Idea of Happiness. And that was what got us our first ever radio plays on Triple J and things like that, and really started to set things off and get us more opportunities. But it's interesting that
the role that they played in that in the development of the Australian music scene, I don't think you can understate it. Yeah, it was like an equivalent of Medi or of DJ AM, or, you know, all these figures. Yams, I even think of as a more current one. They were the types of figures in Australia that were doing what no one else even thought was possible. I think the important thing about that is that they were so it happened very organically. You know, they weren't trying to push anything. They just saw what was happening around them and just wanted to help make that kind of flourish. And yeah, I think the whole community owes a lot to that time, those guys.
Definitely. How do you feel about times now, and what challenges are you seeing? Where is your emotion at with the state of Sydney's night culture?
It's pretty easy to be down about it. Because, you know, I've lived through the trajectory of Sydney's nightlife, and it's at a pretty bad place right now. So many venues that have been important to, not just me personally, but like the community, the music community. It is a real community. Like, you know, everything that we've just discussed, that's a real community, and it's been impacted terribly. And as a result, I've seen a lot of my friends, a lot of people that I've worked with and have been inspired by move away. You know, and I think I totally understand that. Like, of course, it's like it's gone from being not like kind of losing its edge a little bit to being like kind of openly hostile towards our community. That's what it feels like now. Yeah. And I feel like, people are definitely moving away, and it's leaving a massive hole in our culture. But something will rise out of this, because it's undisputable that the kids want to dance. They want to be inspired by music and be involved in something, you know, bigger than themselves. And I think it's hard to see right now, but something good will come from this. Yes. It has to.
Yeah. I think about that too. Like, I just happened to start touring overseas, which has now been indefinitely, the same week they brought in the lockout laws. And I've come back, you know, probably only twice a year since then. Honestly, it's starting to feel like, what is even there when I come back? Like, it's so sad. It's like I can't even spend much time here because there's not enough to keep me moving and keep me working and excited. And that really breaks my heart because
it's like if you were in the mining industry and the town closed its mine, you know.
Yeah, it's like, you
have to go.
You can only mine 4 hours a night.
Yeah. You have to go somewhere where there's mines. And there's just like no mines here anymore, man.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But there's like, you know, there's lots of...
They wouldn't do that though, there's too much money.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, let's not get crazy here. But, yeah.
Well, we don't want to lose all those tax dollars.
Totally.
What's interesting though is I remember when they brought in these lockouts here and then pretty soon after they tried to bring them into the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
And I think one of the flaws with Sydney was the venues weren't fast enough to mobilise and create a body to fight back. Whereas in Queensland, they were very clever and all the venues got together, you know, with lawyers and maybe some of them, I think, even had friends in different political parties. And they all sort of got together and they put forward this, I don't know if you call it a manifesto or something.
Yeah.
And it was like, hey, just so you're aware, government, we bring in over $1 billion worth of income every year across all of our venues and all the events that we do. And they kind of just didn't entertain the idea of lockouts again after that.
I think the difference there is, and I don't want to get too political, but because it's dangerous territory basically, but I think the difference there is that in Sydney there's different interests at play. There's the developers, there's the casino, it's not just public safety, and it's not just nighttime economy that we can bring to it. There's other things there that are kind of affecting the decisions that the state government's making at the moment, which is, I think, making it an immovable object right now.
Yeah. I mean, you simply look at the zoning they did. Yeah. And it's like, they only one spot they left cut out of this lockout zone, and it's the casino.
It's shameless.
Because that's a highly profitable, thing to do, is send everyone there where there's private security that deal with any matters that go unreported. That don't make the news because they don't want it to make the news. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to get too far into tin foil hat territory, but like it's pretty obvious what's going on. And, you know, just in King's Cross, the clubs closed down and the apartments went up. Like
the apartments get taller.
You can see exactly what happened there, you know.
Yes.
I don't think it's too conspiratorial to say that there was
a plan. Question. You see it the world over. Like, been lucky enough to go into so many different countries and you just see this happen. You see it in New York. You see New York losing its soul and its energy.
I remember when I was playing in a band and the first time we started touring overseas was like the mid-2000s, maybe 2006, something like that. And it was the roaring mid-2000s in Sydney. And I remember going overseas in London. We went to spend a few months in London touring. Had a record coming out on an English label. And, you know, had these amazing expectations of what nightlife in London was going to be like. And how much better it was going to be than Sydney. And we arrived there. And it just didn't feel like, I didn't sense that same sense of like community and vibrancy that we had in Sydney at the time. And I just thought, wow, Sydney is where it's at. You know, I really felt like that at the time. And, you know, we were playing in some really interesting places throughout Europe, but I thought, can't wait to get back to Sydney and get immersed in that culture again.
That's but I don't think, isn't it?
Sorry?
That's mad to think.
It's mad to think
we had that.
It's mad to think that, yeah.
Kind of, got taken for granted.
Maybe it did a little bit, but it's
not by us.
Yeah.
It's so crazy that the greatest landmark in our city is the Opera House, which is centered around music and the arts. And then it seems like so much has been put in place to diminish the value of the arts and diminish the value of culture and what that does for a city. That really is what makes a city valuable, puts a city on the map, creates tourism, creates interest, creates amazing events that are remembered for a lifetime. Like why would we work all our lives, just chugging away at things that maybe are a little less favorable if we can't go and celebrate, if we can't go and get together with our community and have like amazing times, eat amazing food, drink amazing wine, hear amazing bands. Like it's just madness to me that this has been considered a second-rate endeavor when it should be the priority. We should be together and celebrating.
I agree with that. On the plus side, I think, it's kind of been built into our DNA as Australians, as people from Sydney, Sydneysiders, that, we are capable of creating that energy. So hopefully it's not gone forever. It's just been suppressed a little bit.
Yeah.
Are we going to talk about like art and stuff?
Shit, sorry, we got so deep.
We're just getting mad deep on this politics and what's happening in culture, but
let me
something I'm passionate about as well. So
sorry, dude.
No, I didn't have any like things that I wanted to specifically talk about. I was I was kind of joking, like with our conversation.
Is there something you really want to talk about that we haven't? Because again, this is my first ever interview, so I don't really know what I'm doing, Pat.
Man, to be honest, it was a joke. Like, I'm happy for the discussion to take whatever course it's gonna take. Yeah. But I was just getting pretty deep on this on the state of Sydney. Mm. But I guess it's an important thing. It is.
It is.
Yeah, I don't think you can talk about music and art and culture, have a conversation about that without ending up talking about lockouts and how the state politics and is affecting music and art and culture. Mm. Yeah. So valid conversation points. I think it's just funny that actually something that we haven't kind of touched on, and you just mentioned Billy. It's not just me that's doing that artwork. There's like a team of us there, and I mean, I guess we have the kind of long-standing personal relationship, which is why I'm here talking to you. Mm. But I do want to give a shout out to Chris Yee and Billy Ryan, who I work with at Babe Cool. We're very much like a creative team. Yeah. We work on things together. Like Chris is an amazing illustrator. And
I remember the Harley Davidson stuff he was doing. I think I came in one time when that was in development, and then I saw the finished product. And it was
so he's an amazing artist in his own right. The stuff that he does with us is pretty different to his personal work, but I just thought I'd raise that because I've been talking about this as if I do everything.
It's all Pat.
Yeah.
Pat's this one-man machine, motoric, nightlife, raves, warehouse parties, tunnel parties in Byron. Should you mention the tunnel party? That was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. We're at Splendor in the Grass, which is like Australia's Coachella, and these guys just send out this text to a few people, and I think maybe a private Facebook group or something. Yeah. And throw this rave in an old tunnel. And it's like the motoric guys, Jono from Jaguar Ma. Who else did you have playing in there? Just 200 people and like a couple of strobes and LEDs. And
it was. That's kind of an indication of like my attitude to music, I guess. It's I for some reason we felt that we hadn't been involved in the programming at there was a little hole in the programming at Splendor, and I thought maybe we can fill that by doing a little unofficial off-site thing. Yeah, but amazing. If you want to see something done, you just got to go and do it. It was really cool to see you there, actually.
Yeah, just stoked to be there, man. It was one of the coolest things I've seen in a minute.
So we've done that a few years now, on the Saturday night of Splendor. I don't know how much longer it can go because I guess
people keep talking about it on camera. And
it's the sort of thing that relies on being not known about. So there's a threshold where it gets too big, and I think maybe we've reached that. We'll see what happens this year.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah,
all those folks wandering in the woods trying to find this tunnel.
That's the spirit of the rave, man, right there.
Perfect. All right, Pat, you're the best, man. Great to see you, man. You're the best.
Thanks for having me, dude.
Great chats.
Great chats.